Where is the reservoir for the coronavirus? I'll first explain the concept of a reservoir, pinpoint where the reservoir would be in the US, and suggest some ideas for decreasing the amount of coronavirus in the reservoir. So here you're looking at the desert. It's such a vast area, there's no rain. Where did they get all this water? Where is the reservoir? The store of water so that plants can survive? Well, we're at the Al Maha Resort in Dubai. It's a luxury resort, obviously has pools and all these things. There's plenty of water. But how about for those plants out there? If you look past the animal, you'll see these trees called a gaff tree. The scientific name is Prosopis cinerea. We all know human beings get water by sort of moving, by transporting water, but trees don't move. They can't transport water. There's no irrigation system here. I didn't see any oases, and I asked the guide, and he told me, no, we don't have any. They just use the underground water. Really? That's pretty amazing. So I looked it up. Apparently this tree is pretty amazing. It could have roots that go 20 meters deep and could reach water at 53 meters or more. That's 160 feet. That's really deep. That explains why I can't see the water, because there's no water to be seen. It's so deep underground, and that explains why this tree could survive through summer, winter. It doesn't really matter what season, because the water supply is so deep underground, doesn't really change. And recently you've heard about the coronavirus surges in different states, California, Texas, Florida, and you might be wondering, where did these cases all come from? Did they just spring out of nowhere? Well, in some countries like New Zealand, where they have so few local cases, it might be a imported case. And in China, all the new cases were imported. Somebody else brought it in. But, we all know in the US, there's very few imported cases. It's all local community spread. So where's this oasis? Where's this life source for the coronavirus, causing record-breaking numbers of hospitalized patients? In California, hospitals are overloaded. They're already transferring them from Southern California to Northern California. Doctors have been called out of retirement to come back and help out. Well, it's here. The white van. Everybody knows the white van. It's everywhere. Nobody pays any attention to it. It's hiding in plain sight, but it must be it. It must be the reason the coronavirus has sprung up again. Or it could be here, a spring break trip by young people to Cabo San Lucas, going back to Texas and finding some of them have it. Or a spring break in Florida. If I get corona, I get corona. Apparently that's a slogan. It's not going to slow the partying. So let's go back and talk a little bit about how a virus works in general. So you have this coronavirus here on the left and it's infecting a human host on the right. And there's a variety of ways in which you could do it, but basically it has to get inside a human cell. And then it can replicate inside the cells, duplicating its cell. The coronavirus outside of a cell has no way of replicating or reproducing. It uses the machinery of the human cell to reproduce itself. And after it's reproduced, there's one of two possible scenarios. One is that the human host dies and the coronavirus kills the person. Obviously, as this happens, you hear about in the news. And then there's not much further spread because the human body isn't moving around much anymore. It's not coughing, it's not spitting at the virus. The human being is dead. Coronavirus is sort of stuck. Another possibility is the human being is still alive. He gets to move around, he gets to cough, breathe, spew it out. The coronavirus can spread to more and more people. And if you look, there's another famous coronavirus, the MERS, Middle East Respiratory Virus, which was thought to be a big deal, but actually fizzled out pretty quickly, unlike the COVID-19 we have today. It had a higher fatality rate, and that makes sense. Before the virus has a chance to spread, the human host it infected was dead. So it can't spread very much because it killed them too quickly. So the ideal situation for a virus to spread is to infect people, have them replicate virus, don't have them be too symptomatic because people know and avoid you, don't have them die because the person can't move around anymore, there's no delivery service. So which population would be ideal for this, for the coronavirus? What would be the perfect reservoir for the coronavirus? The white van? No, I told you, it's not a living thing. The virus could live in there for a few days, but it can't reproduce itself. But what about young people, the ones who went out, had parties, did exactly the opposite of social distancing, wore absolutely no masks? Well, if you look, young people are actually the perfect reservoir. They have extremely low death rates. They don't die from the coronavirus. And if you don't have your reading glasses on or don't magnify, you actually can't even see the line. Is this above zero or not? Huh? Do young people even die? Well, the answer is yes, but very, 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 very rarely. So they don't worry about it because rarely does a young person die of the coronavirus. They could get sick, be hospitalized, yes, but they rarely die. The Washington Post did an analysis of how many young people died. If you consider under 50 young, at least 750. This was back in April, which doesn't sound like very much. And in those people under age 20, say teenagers who I've never seen wearing a mask outside, death is extremely rare. To infant, 9. 9? This was April 8th when the total deaths from coronavirus in the US were at 18,000. 9? 9 out of 18,000 is a whopping 0.05%. No wonder young people aren't scared. Basically, anything else is more likely to kill them than the coronavirus. And given these are the people who go on party, who don't wear masks, who don't practice social distancing, it only makes sense that many of the new cases are these young people. They're the reservoir. This is causing coronavirus cases to jump. These young people who are practically invincible are the ones spreading the coronavirus to older people who aren't invincible and are dying. They're basically super spreaders. Now, this isn't my idea originally. This is not a new idea. My friend told me a while back that the Japanese actually vaccinated young people, the school children, for the flu, and they decreased the death rate from the flu by just doing this. It's quite a novel idea, right? That you don't vaccinate the people who are at high risk of dying from the flu, but rather the people who aren't really at risk of dying from the flu anyways, but they're the highest risk from spreading it around. The study from the New England Journal of Medicine looked at a period from 1962 to 1987, when most Japanese schoolchildren were vaccinated against the flu, and what effect it had on the mortality in general from the flu in Japan. Firstly, note that very little flu vaccine was given to elderly and other people at high risk. In 1977, 20 million people were vaccinated. 17 million, or 85%, were school children. And yes, even though school children usually don't die from the flu, the fact that less students were absent from school attested to the fact that the vaccination worked. And as you can see here, it appeared from 1962 onward, the death rates from flu and pneumonia dropped dramatically, until the late 1980s when it started to go up, coinciding with the loosening and eventual repeal of the vaccination program for school children. And it makes a lot of sense. Who are the ones who could give the flu to the elderly? Grandchildren. School children, they come and go freely. Nobody worries about them. Nobody thinks these people are germy grease balls. But yes, they actually carry a tremendous amount of germs. Just ask any parents who has remembered a period when their children went to school and before their children went to school. Did they get sick afterwards? Definitely. So how do we eradicate this reservoir? How do we make it so there aren't so many young people who basically never died from the coronavirus but could pass it on to others very well, getting the coronavirus, transmitting the coronavirus? Well, here's an article talking about how a young man states on his deathbed that he might have made a mistake attending a COVID-19 party. COVID-19 party is where people try to get the coronavirus from people who are known to have it. They think they could get immunity that way, or they may just do it for fun like any party without any thought, as young people often do. Either way, it's a bad idea. There's no proof you'll get immunity, first of all, and you could literally die, though the risk, as we noted, is very low for young people. So do you think young people will listen to this man on his deathbed? Somebody died. Yeah, so what? It's not me. This guy was old. He's in his 30s. That's like ancient. Stuff happens to old people. When you're young, you feel invincible. Hearing about some random guy who died isn't going to make you think otherwise. So what can we do to eradicate this reservoir? Well, start masking to start off. Stupid adults don't wear masks because they think they won't get it and they can't die. Well, we all know they could die. But while young people who aren't wearing masks because they aren't worried about coronavirus aren't actually wrong, their chances of dying from it are very low. They're at risk for giving it to others. And when I saw young people, as we saw in the studies of flu vaccination among school children, it includes children. This requires to have a cultural shift. Just like we taught kids they have to sit in a car seat, they have to wear seatbelts, even though they don't like it, we have to start teaching everybody without exception that they have to wear masks. Remember the Pixar movie Up, where Doug finds Russell? He found a friend who likes him, his best buddy, and yet he ends up betraying him, leading the enemy to his best buddy. He didn't realize he had a tracking device on him. You don't want people to be unknowingly infected because you happen to be carrying a coronavirus and you give it to all your loved ones. And for young people who don't know any better, the decision has to be made for them. Just like how Tide had come out and make a commercial hiring Rob Gronkowski to explain why you shouldn't eat Tide Pods, and how YouTube took down all the videos featuring eating Tide Pods, so we too have to stop the spreading of the idea that young people getting coronavirus is harmless. It's true they're not likely to die, but harmless? They're harming basically all the older people. They are the reservoir that needs to be stopped.